Hello and welcome to Shredded Cels, episode 25. I am your host, Alex Schmitz, and with me here today is Clara Heimberger.
Oh, hi there.
And a new special guest to the podcast, Chase, what's your last name?
Pritchard.
So Chase Pritchard is here with us today.
Hi, Ma.
And for those of you who are listening to us for the first time, this is the Shredded Cels, an anime podcast, and we are part of Tech Heads, which is part of AVW Productions, a media production organization here at Ohio University. We here at Tech Heads do all sorts of cool stuff. We have podcasts, we got video content. We also have a blog on avwproductions.com. You can read all of our articles. We do gamings, movies, TV shows.
Very, very hard on those.
Exactly.
Yes, very.
But here today, we're here to talk about anime, and specifically the show Sword Art Online. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about the animation we've watched since last time. Now, Chase, since you're a new member to the podcast, why don't you give us a quick bit about who you are and how you got into anime in the first place?
Like in terms of like animation, anime, or...
Anime.
Okay, well, for anime, of course, Toonami. And, in case with Toonami with me, the thing was that somewhere around the late 90s where me and my family finally got cable going on, I used to sit around at home and just keep watching whatever Cartoon Network offered or Nickelodeon out there. And usually it was like Looney Tune reruns, Dexter's Laboratory, Cow and Chicken, Powerpuff Girls, stuff like that. And generally, whenever Toonami came on, I usually saw Toonami as kind of like a thing to get away from like Looney Tune reruns. Like, oh, here's a bunch of guys fighting each other and a bunch of guys thinking about stuff. So usually I just sit around, watch it for a while, and then, I kind of mostly around Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, Dragon Ball, not really that much of Dragon Ball, but as the years went on, it became Saturday night, and I remember like being at my grandma's house and watching that as the weeks go on. And then when Toonami was gone, it was gone. I just thought it was no big deal. Left. The internet made an impression upon me with anime, and I just watched more and more and more. And now it comes to the point where I'm more interested in like the artistic aspects of the show now, like compared to when I was just like that kid who just watched Dragon Ball Z and Bobo, or however Bo's there was.
I love Bobo.
The first part, the first season on DVD, by the way, if you're curious about that.
I watched every episode, and the last episode still drives me crazy.
Yeah, poor thing of that last episode. But anyways, I've kind of been following anime ever since. Like, again, I've been taking it more seriously now. I kind of have my own theories and whatnot about it, and that's how it is. And of course, in terms of like last anime, Sword Art Online for like back on Monday and Tuesday. So I've been watching all 25 episodes, been watching it for this, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
All right. And just real quick, like what's your year here and like what's your major and things like that?
Freshman English.
Okay. Nice. Very cool. Clara, what have you been watching?
Besides Sword Art Online, my friend Ethan and I have continued to rewatch the Naruto series. We are getting really close to the end of the anime. I've been keeping up with the manga, so I know what's going to happen, and I'm sitting there trying not to spoil things, but I'll let things slip, like, he's not really Toby, and stuff like that. And my friend Ethan will be like, wait, what? And I'm just like, I didn't say anything at all.
How are those fillers?
I don't watch fillers.
So you just skip the filler arcs?
We skip fillers.
Probably wise.
So I'm like, Ethan, this didn't happen in the manga, and he's like, skip. So, yeah.
You were spared from seeing the fake Lock Lee.
Yeah, but we're like in episode 300 something. I forget what we're in.
So is that like right before the big ninja war?
We're in the war right now. I just finished watching with him the other day when Shoji activated his huge wing jutsu butterfly thing without the pills, because he's wonderful. But
you like Choji as a character?
I like him as a character, but I'm having mega Kakashi feels, so I'm sorry, Choji. Kakashi takes the cake. But what else have I been watching? Been watching some stuff on Mondo Media on YouTube. Lots of Bravest Warriors. Rewatching Batman Spider-Man because it's adorable, and I wanted some Valentine's Day feels. And
feels.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of documentaries for class, so it's been hard to watch animes, but I'm trying real hard.
Nice. Yeah, I have. To be fair, I have not watched really anything except for Sword Art Online because Sword Art Online took up all of my anime watching time. the 25 episode series.
I pretty much went through episode 85 through 25 on like 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, so I'm all ready.
Yeah, I got through like 4 through like 11 or something in like a single day.
I think I saw like 8 episodes on a Monday, then another 8 on Tuesday, because I remember that before, I think it was episode 9 it was, I just watched it like sporadically on my laptop, and then suddenly my laptop just died on me, so now I've been heading over to the library, just been watching the rest of that through that, and got through that just like that.
Nice.
So
thankfully, my laptop didn't crash on me. I just sort of went through it. I've been wanting to go back. For whatever reason, I felt this urge to go back and watch episode 10 of Madoka Magica again.
Well,
why would you bring that upon yourself, Alex? Why would you go back to that?
Because it's arguably, it's either that or episode 12 as far as like best episodes of the show.
I think Anna will agree with you.
Crying.
Right.
Oh, speaking of Madoka, there are a lot of mommy Valentines. It's
Oh,
like, I'm head over heels in love with you, Valentine. And there's a bunch of head puns. And then the last one was, guys, mommy dies. Happy Valentine's Day. And I was like, this needs to not happen anymore.
Spoilers for Madoka, by the way, in case you didn't know that
If
one already.
anyone has been watching us, they know that mommy's already
That's
dead.
true.
But
I wonder if
ahead.
there's got to be some good Cube Valentines out there.
I haven't seen many. I've just seen the mommy ones.
Nice.
But
Get a Valentine for your contract.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember. I think I might have gone and rewatched Madoka episode 12 at one point just because I wanted to relive that awesomeness. Because I do love the 12th episode, as I've gone into in the past.
Oh, I know people who would disagree with you there.
Yeah,
Jeremy.
I can see. Well, no, Jeremy never got to it.
Well, right, but he just didn't understand. Well, he didn't like the whole
You know-
entropy thing.
Well, yeah, and to his credit, like when you really think about it, it doesn't make a whole
It
lot of
doesn't make
sense.
I'm still scratching my head on how Joan of Arc could be a magical girl. That's
I totally see
bizarre.
it.
I mean, it makes sense, but
It's
it's
how
like
she's so
weird.
awesome.
I don't know.
Strong female winners.
Why couldn't she be a magical girl within the laws they've set up in the universe?
Right, and she did like rise up and defeat like everything, and then they accused her of being a witch. So
There you go.
it all works out.
Maybe they knew about real witches, and they're like, oh, she's a witch. And when
She
it turned
turned
out,
me into a newt.
I got better.
I love Monty Python,
I think everyone loves Monty Python.
except for my friend Danielle. She hates British humor.
Really? I don't know. I love the Holy Grail. I went out and saw The Meaning of Life.
Yeah.
I didn't like that one as much.
There was one I saw with my cousins, and one of the segments was the Queen Victoria races, and it was just a bunch of people dressed up as Queen Victoria, and they were racing. So Queen Victoria's coming around Queen Victoria, and then Queen Victoria's taking the lead around Queen Victoria, and it just kind of went on like that for about 5 minutes. It was really great because a couple of them fell over.
Have you guys seen
course.
Spam-A-Lot?
I've seen it, yeah.
No, I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
I like the movie better.
Yeah, well, of course. It's arguably probably one of their greatest. I mean, all the writers agreed it was their best, so...
But yes.
All right.
Back to
But this
anime.
is not the Monty Python podcast. We are here
Yes.
to talk about Sword Art Online, which is a 2012 anime developed and published by A1 Pictures.
It's baby anime.
Based
A1.
based on a series of light novels, actually, by the same name.
Bunch of ones.
Apparently, it's still ongoing.
It is.
I think the anime only covers like the first 4 volumes of like a 12 or 13 episode or volume light novel series.
Same rival of Excel World, by the way.
Yeah, I've heard that, which apparently has a very similar video game premise, which
does.
seems a little strange for the same writer to do the same show, just with different sort of characters and plot points.
Before I started watching the series, I looked it up because I was scared I wasn't going to have enough time. So I'm like, oh, I'll just read it. I can read super fast. And so what I read was about only 300 pages long, and it was an extremely summarized version of the anime, which excluded a lot of points. Like Yui, she was mentioned, but I didn't know what she was. And I was like, wait, who is this? And so when we actually got to her in the anime, I'm like, I instantly love you. But,
Maybe she is Shinji's mother.
Yeah.
but
No
it was
Ava references in this
so-
podcast. I
and
won't
like
allow it.
all of the random female characters he encountered, like the blacksmith, Liz, and little dragon tamer girl.
Yeah.
Like those are just little mini side comics on their own.
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually in like a 300-page long series. It was mostly just him and Asuna.
Yeah. Generally, I think I've heard that episodes 2 through 7 were pretty much short stories as the main light novels went on. So maybe that can explain why the pacing is what it is.
Yeah, I'd heard that as well, that a lot of those, for lack of a better term, the harem section of the anime was based off of just little subplots in the light novels, and they decided to expand them into fully fledged episodes in the anime.
Went into chronological order.
Right. But I figure we're going to split the discussion about the show into two parts, since it's neatly divided into two seasons, from 1 to 14, and then from 14 all the way, or from 15 to 25. So let's start with the first episode, which I personally thought was a pretty great first episode. Like, it really grabs you with the premise of the show, because I think the show does have a really strong premise going for it. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Well, the thing is with the first episode is that if you think about kind of like the tone of the whole thing is kind of like, I wouldn't say it's against the later episodes, but in terms of first impressions, the whole first episode thinks to be a lot more grander than what say episode 7 was, which was all about Kirito hanging out with the females, kind of developing bonds with them. This first episode, on the other hand, he develops this bond, but then eventually it leads to the whole big plot point where it turns out that the big bad guy is out to do a big bad thing, and everyone reacts to it, and then it ends with this big heroic scream at the end. And I don't know, it seems in terms of first impressions, things kind of got off on not a misleading start, but more of what's the word I'm looking for, grander.
Right. Well, I would agree with that. Just in general about the show, I sort of feel like it's a show that's trying to be a lot of different things. On the one hand, it's trying to be this epic action adventure show. On the one hand, it's trying to be a romance show. And on the one hand, it's trying to do this murder mystery subplot. It's trying to do all these different things.
It's trying to fit all the genres.
Right. And I feel like it could have just been a straight action adventure, epic, go conquer all the dungeons in this game sort of show.
With romance on the side.
Right, with a romantic subplot, and it would have been better if they just focused on that.
But still, I never felt overwhelmed by any of the side genres they did. I just found they were almost, I don't want to say filler, because fillers don't affect anything at all, but during the time Kirito was growing stronger, he was forming bonds with Asuna and other things like that with other characters, so they weren't completely pointless and they tied in. They're little side quests almost, but because they always wrapped up in the end and then never touched it ever again, except for when they brought Liz back to fix his things. But I never really felt too annoyed or overwhelmed with it. It just flowed for me.
For me, I have some. We'll get to it when we get into more of a discussion on episode 3, because there were some problems I had with episode 3.
Oh, yeah.
But it definitely served a point in the show. I understand why it was there, because it gave this whole reason why Kirito didn't join guilds,
right.
And it really sort of established this whole idea that anyone could die, in this show, and made him feel guilty because he had lied about his level, in order to be in their guild and all this stuff. So I can see why that was there just from the perspective of the larger story. But the episode after that, episode 4, that whole bit has really no relevance to the plot other than to establish this whole thing with green players, orange players, and red players, and establish the fact that Kirito is this BAMF, basically, that none of the lower level players can touch.
Can't touch this.
Yeah, all it really does is kind of establish more of the appeal to Kirito and why lone wolves or something are respectable, or however that works. Right.
And then the episode with Liz, it was also a bit of a one-off, but I sort of liked it in that they let you spend time just with Liz and Kirito, and you actually grew to sort of like the relationship, and you sort of felt a little bit sad for her when it turns out Asuna shows up and she figures out, oh wait, she's the one who likes Kirito, and it's sort of the whole point of giving him the second sword, which proves out to be important later. So that did serve somewhat of a point.
The thing is, I got so mad at Asuna because she was so in love with Kirito, and I don't know, in the beginning, there wasn't any chemistry between him and Asuna. It was hey, we're just working together, and we're both strong, so meh. But when he was with other female characters, he actually showed affection towards them. He was hey, I'm gonna protect you, you're like a little sister to me, or I'm gonna protect you because I don't want to lose you, I lost someone else who was important to me. it's like he had more connections with them, but like up until that point, not as much with Asuna. And then it's like, oh, hey, I just like you all of a sudden.
I don't know. I think because,
They
have
had interactions, but it was like there was never a moment where it was like, maybe I like her.
Yeah, I felt like with them at that point, around the time that they were at that episode with Liz, it's more of building up a friendship, than a real relationship. And Kirito is a little bit blind to how much Asuna likes him.
He's so dense.
Up until near the end when they finally confess their love for each other and all that.
In my house.
But and I have some problems with the whole Kirito Asuna thing, but I do at least appreciate that the anime does give a significant amount of time to that, to let it develop and to let you grow attached to those two characters. So it does sort of work instead of being a complete failure.
Right.
One thing I did want to mention about the first episode is just that I liked how they built up this whole thing with Klein, and he's showing him, how to succeed in the game, and it was sort of establishing the rules of the game in a clever way.
Klein is my favorite. I love him.
I like that element of that episode.
Yeah, but the problem I had with it there, though, is near the end of the episode, Klein's going to go back to his buddies, in the plaza, and Kirito chooses to go away. And they have this, like, tearful goodbye scene where he's, like, yelling at him, like, Kirito, no, don't go. And Kirito, like, cringes, but still goes on, doesn't look back or whatever. It's like, these guys have known each other for, like, 10 minutes, and they're, like, having this tearful goodbye as if, like, they've known each other for years.
And then he goes kills a pig.
Well, I feel like they were together for like the entire day because it went from like midday until evening.
So okay, fine. A few hours. But still, I'm just saying it was an overreaction for how much we knew about them at that point.
Well, I mean, at the time, I feel like maybe he wanted to join up with him just to like have a sense of security. And like because they had already been together, they understand each other a little bit more than all of these strangers who had been playing by themselves. Mm-hmm. So he's like, oh, if we stick together because we're already best friends now, kind of, sort of, but we'll be okay. But then Kirito's like, no, I don't want to do that because I already know how to do all this stuff and I don't want to lose anyone and I'm emotionally detached from the world.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was more like, hey, I want to stay with you because I want to succeed with you because we've already been together so far. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm trying to think of something to compare it to.
Yeah.
But
well, I liked Klein as a character, and I felt like he was a little underused in the show in general because he comes back as a little side character like a few times to like help Kirito or save him. And then he completely disappears for the second half of the show, like he's not there at all. And I thought that was a bit of a shame because he and I forget the name of the big black guy. Yeah, Gil. Like
he was so funny.
Yeah, they were some cool side characters. That I would have liked to see a little bit more of. And one other bit I did like about the first episode, like this is just something I liked in the show in general. Just the little references or little just reminders of like, oh, hey, this is an MMO world. That they throw in there, like how what's his name, Kayaba. Akio Kayaba, the guy who made the game, he goes and makes it so everyone's player avatars look like they're real life players. Yeah. And you see so many girls turn out to be dudes.
Yeah, that was hysterical.
I thought that...
It's like, wait, you're not a girl? Yeah. You lied about being 18? Yeah. And I was like, this is awkward.
Exactly. Like, well, even I think Kirito looked older, before he got reset, to look like his real self. Like, what was he, 14 at that point?
He was 16.
No, but he was 16 after the 2 years.
So he was 14 at the time.
Technically, he was 14.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, by the way, we'll be spoiling Sword Art Online in case you couldn't tell already.
All the spoils.
So just be aware, listeners. And then I quite like the second episode. We got the build up to the big boss battle, and the boss battle itself was the first demonstration of like what I personally find to be my favorite elements of the show, which is like the big action scenes.
I just love
they never disappoint.
Everything in the show is beautifully animated. There wasn't like, I rarely found a time where I was like, man, that's kind of cheap. Like I never felt like that. I'm like, this is so nice.
Yeah, there were a few times when they used like the trick of using still frames and having speed lines on the side.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even then, it looked nice.
Oh, yeah. No, the show looks great in general, and especially the fight animations are incredible. Chase, you seem to be pretty knowledgeable about animation. What did you think
Well,
of
I wouldn't
that?
call myself knowledgeable, but well, the thing is with episode 2 is that well, if you exclude like all those appearances that happened like in the first episode, like really the big thing with that second episode was that it kind of like kickstarted the whole relationship with Asuna and Kirito, and how that developed and how it goes to like this big epic boss fight and how they learn to work together and try to kill the big monster. But I don't know, the second episode was kind of like more of a case of like developing relationships and how exactly like the world works beyond the first episode, and how exactly that works. There's, I don't know, in terms of like plot, there's not really that much to talk about.
Well, the important plot point, though, is that it includes this whole concept of the beaters, like the beta testers versus, the real world players. And I thought that was actually an interesting dynamic of, in this world where when you die in the game, you die in real life, the fact that the beta testers have this extra knowledge, and they oftentimes they do what Kirito did, sort of go lone wolf and don't really share their knowledge, and try to level up as good as they can. That makes the other players sort of jealous and mad at them. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic that was like a examination of what would really happen if this was a real situation in real life.
I feel like, I don't know, if I was in that game and I knew someone was a beta tester, I would stick to them like glue. As much as they were like, I don't want you here, I'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing, help. So I feel like I would be drawn to them more than angry at them, because it's like, if I don't know something, I want to go find someone who knows what they're talking about. I want to know exactly what they do, and since they've already been in the game, they understand it, and they can give me, that's like exactly how Kirito was with Klein. He was like, hey, everything in here is going to get all farmed to nothing, so let's go to the next place over and start training there. And he was like, no, I've got my buddies. And so he knew what he was talking about. And if Klein would have gone with him, it would have been beneficial to him. But he chose not to. But I feel like I would be one of those people who would be like, beta testers, all flock to me. I want your help. Protect me. But
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would feel.
Well, and I also liked how you said his name was Eagle, right?
Agilia.
Eagle, yeah. How he made the point that the handbook that everyone was given was made from the information gathered by the beta testers, So there was a way they were sharing their information with everyone. So, helping to redeem that whole aspect of it. One thing that did confuse me a little, because we have the whole plot line where, I forget his name, the captain, the blue-haired captain, who was also a beta tester, as it turns out, goes...
Mr. Fluffy Hair.
Yes, but the boss is different for some reason, like different than he was in the beta test, and he gets hit and dies. And then we get that awesome little bit where Kirito and Asuna are sort of tag teaming in and out, taking out the boss, and that was cool. And then I maybe I missed something, but I don't remember why exactly Kirito acts like such an asshole after that, and is like, he takes the special item and is like, yeah, I'm a beater, I made it all the way to level 19 or whatever it was.
8.
And was that it?
8, yeah.
Okay, level 8, and I'm gonna go and get all the way to the top. I'm gonna do it by myself, and I don't need you guys. I'm way stronger than any of you, blah blah blah. And he goes off to do his whole lone wolf thing. But before he did it, though, he hesitated. He gulped before he did it. So I thought there was some reluctance to it, or he was being forced to do it for some reason, to cast them away for their own safety or for their own good or something.
Maybe he just felt like they would never believe him, even if he was like, no, I promise I'm just like you guys. I've just been here for a month or so. It's just, I feel like after all of that, and they still weren't trusting of him, even after he saved all of their butts, it's like, nothing I'm going to do is going to make you like me, so I might as well just go off on my own right now and make a name for myself so that you know not to cross my path, because I know that you're not going to trust me, kind of thing. Just stay away from me now, because I know that we're never going to be friends, type of thing. I don't know. It's just distancing yourself from negativity and negativity words.
Yeah, I might have to rewatch that just because I guess through a first viewing, I just didn't understand what his motivation was for doing that.
I understood it. If all these people are yelling at you you're a phony, you're a fraud, you're just fine, I'll just leave then. So it was pretty much what I thought he was doing. I guess I just read the moment differently, because remember the captain's dying last words were to protect them, which is what he did when he beat the monster. But you thought maybe he
stick with the guild after that, but no, not so much. One bit that did sort of make me think a little bit was right there during the boss battle. There's a bit where the boss like hits Asuna and her cloak flies off. There's just like this slow-mo shot where that's the first time we see her full body, and her hair is all long and stuff. It was sort of like, I get why that's there, but at the same time, is it supposed to be surprising to us? Because it was plain as day obvious, from her voice and everything, that she was a girl.
Right.
So were we really supposed to be surprised by that?
Yeah.
Maybe it was like, oh, she's a super pretty, beautiful lady girl.
And
so it's like...
And, well, she did appear, like, in episode 1 for, like, 2 seconds, so there's that to consider.
Yeah. Well, and something I read later, I don't remember it specifically, but apparently, what's his name? Heathcliff, who it turns out to be the villain in the end, is actually there in the plaza in episode 1. I bet you if you go back and rewatch it now, you'll notice some characters that pop up later that are in that plaza, because everyone's there at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then one bit that did worry me a little bit as far as Asuna's intelligence was there at the end. She's like saying goodbye to Kirito, as he's going off to do his lone wolf thing, and she's like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "You can read it atop my health bar." And she looks up and sees it. It's like, is she really that stupid that she just never looked at his health bar? Like,
maybe it just didn't notice.
I know.
I get just something. There's like, oh, I'm just gonna find out everyone's name. I feel like that's not like someone's top priority in this world. It's like make everyone friends.
It does make me question her intelligence a little bit. Although I think it's established that she was a new player, and becomes good as she goes along. I also, this is just sort of a visual thing, but I do quite like how, there are multiple times when they'll go into that first person view and it's sort of got that fisheye effect. And it makes that weird.
I hope it doesn't make that noise all the time because that's obnoxious.
Yeah. But I thought that was a nice way of illustrating, when we were in the person's head, and getting us there so we could like see the health bar, like see when they look up at their hands, and it's been cut off or whatever. All right, and then we get to episode 3.
Oh, boy.
Episode 3 is interesting because, like I said earlier, I see why they have it there. It serves a purpose to the plot and to Kirito's character and everything about, losing people he cares about in a party and everything. But the fact that they do this whole bit, what did you say her name was? The chick?
Sachi.
Is that her name?
Sachi, yes.
Okay.
I'm in lesbians with Sachi.
Why?
Because she's adorable.
But she has no character other than that she's cute and shy and
that's her
can't
character,
fight.
and she's cute. I love her.
But
Don't judge me.
Can I just say though that as soon as Sachi was telling Kirito like, "Oh, I'm afraid, I'm afraid of dying in this world," he's like, "Don't worry, I'll protect you. There's no way you're gonna die." It's like, yeah, she's gonna die, isn't she?
Since I read the comic beforehand, I knew what was gonna happen, so I was like, "Oh man."
But
I was hoping I wasn't going to attach to her, but I got attached.
My problem with it, and this is just a problem I have with the show in general, like, you were talking earlier about how none of the little subplots bothered you. Mm-hmm. And I suppose they usually didn't bother me individually, but the fact that there's so many of them together, and just how it happens over and over in the show and even into the second season, that basically, even though Kirito, he's a nice enough guy, but he's not particularly charismatic or good looking. He's kind of antisocial. He doesn't want to hang out with other people.
He's a cool bad boy.
And yet, every single girl he meets immediately falls for him within like 10 minutes of knowing him.
He's also adorbs.
Okay, well.
Adorbs.
Adorable.
And all of these girls seem to have this condition where it's like, well, I can't fight for myself and he protects me, so I'm going to like him because of that.
He's also 30 levels higher than them, so...
Right, but I prefer to see more of a, strong-willed character. And you get that for a while with Asuna.
That's where Asuna comes in.
But then Asuna changes in that regard as time goes on.
Well, she becomes pretty awesome at the end, I guess. She's strong enough.
Oh, yeah, she's a strong character, and she shows her own in combat. But I just guess, like, after the whole marriage thing, she becomes more reliant on him, And, like, I liked earlier in the show how Asuna sort of talked back to him, and, would, like, punch him in the face when he did something stupid or threaten to throw her like little dinner knife at his face or whatever, and she lost that part of her personality. She just became more of a, lovey-dovey, obedient wife sort of thing. in the later part of the show, at least in my opinion.
Maybe that's what she just wanted to do. She was tired of fighting.
Yeah, well, you did get that they were tired of fighting, but I don't think just because you're tired of fighting doesn't mean that stronger part of your personality has to go away,
Maybe it just wasn't something she needed to do at the time.
I guess.
I don't know. I'm just making...
But back to episode 3, the real reason I just dislike it is just because they try to pull on your heartstrings with Sachi's death.
Oh, yeah.
Problem is...
so cute.
Okay, fine, she's kind of cute, but... she's been on screen for all of 10 minutes before she dies. Oh, yeah. So you have no real attachment to her when she dies. And then they try to pull on your heartstrings even harder when, you get the message from her that was left to Kirito, saying like, well, I knew I was going to die the whole time. I mean, I'm probably dead as you're listening to this. So don't beat yourself up about it. I'm weak and stupid and it's not your fault and blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't really connect with that just because I didn't care about this character because I barely got to know her. She's just this cardboard cutout thing. Had they actually devoted some time to this little arc and given it, let's say, like 3 or 4 or 5 episodes to develop and then killed her, then I would have been weeping on the floor, Right. But you can't just do it in a single 10 minutes.
Oh, they would be manly tears.
They would be manly tears. I'm okay with that. I don't know.
They're only manly
Did
tears.
that bother you two at all?
Yeah, it did. I mean, if you see episode 3, it kind of shows that like the whole thing was taken from like a short story, like with the whole like short aspect of it, and try to expand upon 24 minutes. I mean, expanding upon a character for like one episode isn't bad, but the thing is with that episode is that, well, you don't really know that much of the characters in order for like the whole thing to reasonably work. I mean, yeah, Sachi is adorable and all the people are likable, but the thing is that, well, once they all die, then where are we supposed to go from there?
Right. Or even like I mentioned, Liz, from a later one of those sort of offbeat, filler episodes just focused on Kirito and some girl.
I like her too.
But I like that better because one, Liz has a more of a personality, I think, and number 2, they give it a full episode to develop that relationship, whereas this is literally half an episode. Like halfway through, she dies. So it's not even a full episode of development. It's half an episode. That's even worse, that they try to pull on your heartstrings with her death.
Maybe just because I just identify with Sachi, because I'm just bad at video games that involve me fighting other human beings.
But you're not fighting other human beings in this. You're fighting monsters.
I know, but like that's also, it's like they're more intelligent than just some like words. Okay, so I'm just bad at fighting things in general, especially against other people. I don't like losing.
Right.
But if it's something I'm new at, I'm gonna be really shy about it, and I just curl up in a little ball, and I'm like, everyone save me! I don't know what I'm doing. Help!
Something I was just thinking of, part of the Kirito lies about his level, like he's level 40 something and they're like level 20, and he lies saying he's around their level, to get into the guild. And this is supposed to be, to disguise the fact that he's a beater and all that. But, at the same time, like, tell them that you're level 40 from the beginning, and they're probably like, well, awesome, like, to have someone who was level 40 on our guild would be great, it'd make us that much stronger.
He hasn't gotten that reaction so far, so maybe he's just cautious.
I guess that's true. This whole beater thing has a certain label to it, but he doesn't even have to say that he's a beater, even though people would probably suspect that with him being level 40, while everyone else is level 20. Why wouldn't you want to have a strong person on your team? Like, that makes sense to me if you're in an RPG. So that bothered me a little. And then we've talked a bit about episode 4 already. I mean, like I said, beyond, I did like the whole, establishing of the different colors of players, and how that correlates to, whether you kill someone or not, and all of that. But it was plainly obvious, from the very beginning that the one chick from the girls' party was going to be evil. And of course she's going to come there, to try to kill them. Of course
she's red and she's hot. I mean, of course she's evil.
One thing that did sort of bother me is in that episode, they have the whole bit where Kirito has the regenerating health, and so because he regenerates more health than they can take away in like 10 seconds, it's literally impossible for them to beat him. And I thought that was cool because that's using video game like mechanics and things, and it makes sense because, in a real MMORPG, like a super high level character is going to be able to trounce a bunch of low level characters. But I don't think we ever see that whole regenerating health thing again. Like, there's a number of times when Kirito gets hurt later on, and you see his health bar go down, but it never does the regen thing. It just stays at that point. So did they just forget about that as, like, one of his abilities?
Didn't he say it was, like, a skill he had? So maybe he just disabled the skill to make room for something else.
But why would he... possibly, but why would you disable something as good as health regen? Like, at least in the RPGs I've played, like, that's a super good ability. Usually when you get at later levels, so to be able to regen like 600 health every 10 seconds, that's something you'd want to keep on if you're fighting a tough boss like he was, risking your life. Why wouldn't you want that ability?
I don't have the answers for that.
I know. Well, point is the show writers screwed up is what I'm saying. But
write an angry email.
I'll try. All right, and what did you guys think of 5/6? That was sort of, if I'm not mistaken, that was that was the mystery episode, which I actually found to be quite interesting. I thought with the end of the way episode 5 ended, I thought it was going to be like the start of that was going to be like the main plot line, like finding out who was the evil person behind these attacks. But then it turned out to be something resolved within a single episode.
The laughing coffin.
Yes.
But,
I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on it?
I don't. It wasn't anything that really struck my fancy. I mean, what's her face? Whoever the chick was. I was like, you're average. I don't know anything about you. I don't like you. But I don't know. I didn't like her as much as the other female side characters we came up across. But like, it just the whole thing about it, I was curious to find out what was happening. But it was like, at the same time, it didn't like grip me as much, I guess, because there wasn't as much like emotion. It was more like, ooh, someone killed someone. Ooh, it's a ghost. It wasn't like, no, we must save our friends. Right. It was more like, oh my God, we're so scared and everyone's dying and we don't know what's going on at all.
Right. Well, I was sort of under the impression that, I kept on thinking in that first episode 5, that it was going to turn out that the innocent-looking girl was going to be the one, like, behind everything.
I totally thought it was her the whole time.
Then when it turned out, like, she had the knife in her back at the end of the episode, I was, like, legitimately surprised. And then with the whole little twist of how they were using their armor, like, their armor was the thing going down, and once the armor disappeared, they used the teleporting stone at the same time, it made sense, and it felt like
very clever.
Yeah, it felt like a good, murder mystery sort of little plot line.
But what confused me is that I don't know if I got this right, but when they're in the conference, it's like, ooh, sell it or keep it, and it's like all those in favor of selling it. For some reason, I feel like it was the people selling it. They were the majority, right? Or were they the minority? Because
I don't remember.
They were the minority?
No, selling it was the majority because then the leader went to go to a town to sell it the next day, and that's when she got killed.
But then it's like all the people who wanted to keep it were the ones being killed off? That's what I got out of that?
Right. The ones who wanted to keep it were being killed off, and because they were assuming that they were the ones who had forced... they were the most suspected for being the killers, Like the people who opposed the idea of her selling it would be the ones the most suspect to be the murderer.
It just didn't make sense to me at all. Nothing clicked with that. I was like, why would you? What? I feel like it's always like the majority who gets like attacked, so maybe that's why I was confused. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. And
I did think it was a little weird that this whole thing was a dramatic setup by the other two, the first guy that got killed and the girl, just to get the third guy to confess, and like to get the truth out of him. Like that was the whole reason they did this whole faking their deaths thing. And speaking of which, it's the whole of them, like I said, the whole thing with them letting their armor disappear and all that, that was a clever way of disguising it. But it's not really that effective of a thing to try to show that you're dead when Asuna was just able to look at her friends list, find the girl, and be like, oh, hey, look, it says that she's on floor 19 at the graveyard place. Like, if you could just look on your friends list and go to your friend and see, oh, hey, look, it looks like they're alive at this point in the map, then it would be pretty obvious that, you're not actually dead.
Maybe they're like, oh, they're dead. That's it. That's it. Well, because death is final, and so it's not like...
Well, I know, but, like, you could, like, it's established earlier that you can find a player, like, you can see where they're on the map and watch their progress. So if you just saw that dot move even an inch, you know that they were alive, because obviously if they're dead, they're not going to move, you know?
I feel like it's only works if they got them selected or something.
And actually, it wouldn't even work if they were dead, because there's no body. It's not like they're burying their bodies in this graveyard. Their bodies just disappear when they die, you know? So, well, just another little plot hole for me, I guess.
I don't know.
I did think it was a little bit interesting how they explained, was it Grimjaw? That was the name of the husband?
It's
I can't remember.
It's something like
I think
that.
that
It
was
sounds like something that shouldn't be his name, because they're like, oh, he's such a nice guy, and his name has Grim in it. And I'm like, that's not suspicious.
That's always a good sign. But I did actually kind of like how his whole reasoning basically for it was that his wife was just a completely different person in the game versus what she was like. My perfect little
porcelain doll is now a ravaging, amazing, awesome lady, and I don't like it because now I can control her. Meh.
Yeah, well, obviously it's still despicable, but just the whole idea of, someone changing from their real life, to the in-game, I thought was an interesting dynamic. It could have very well been the opposite, that she was this, very dynamic woman outside in real life, and then in the game she just got so scared. Maybe she was one of those people who wanted to just stay in the town of beginnings, and never leave because she was so scared of dying, so afraid of the world.
That would be me. What?
You would have been one of those people?
Nah, I try to get to at least 4 or 5.
But I think it's also in that episode that Kirito eats Asuna's food for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy.
And I did actually kind of like how it was a excuse me. It was a direct I don't know what you want to call it, reference to when he gave Asuna food, because remember in the episode 2 he gave her the little piece of bread with the honey on it, and she ate it and was like, it's good, and ate more of it. And he did the exact same thing. He hands her the sandwich, he takes a little bite, and he's like, it's good, and then eats a whole bunch more of it, and I liked how that was a nice little mirror of each other.
It is cute.
Yeah, it was cute. Although it did sort of, the whole cooking thing with us, though, I thought was kind of funny, because later on Kirito, I think it's after he eats the whatever it was, the super rare bird, that he got, or the bunny.
Rabbit, yeah.
Yeah, it was that. And he's like, you could probably make a big living selling all of this food that you make. And then he thought for a second, he's like, wait, don't do it. I want this food all to myself. It's like, does he just love Asuna for her cooking skills? Like, is that what we're getting to here? Are you that selfish?
It's a perk. Well, we already know he's selfish because he's out by himself, but...
What a funny perk.
Yeah.
Right. And then... what is it? Episode 7 is the one with the Smith lady, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Liz.
Yeah, we've already talked about that one a little bit. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add. I did think the fight with the dragon was kind of cool. And like I said, Liz's character I thought was more interesting than the other random one-off harem girls that we'd seen. And so I actually cared about her character a bit. And the fact that she sort of sucked it up and was like, no, you go be with Asuna, and I'm just going to be your weaponsmith. I'm going to be here for you, when... even though I love you, I'm going to let you go, sort of thing.
And then IRL, she's so jealous.
Right.
It's so cute.
The pacing was a lot better, too.
Yeah, it definitely felt better than episodes 3 or 4 as far as pacing was concerned, I thought. Well, one bit I wanted to mention just before we get off from these earlier episodes is just how sort of disjointed the story is when it comes to the time skips. Because we start in episode 1, we're in November of the year 2022. We get to episode 2, we're in December of that same year. And it's like, okay, a 1-month jump to episode 2. That's not completely unreasonable. Although I think within that 1 month, like 2,000 players die or something like that. Like they say that at the end of episode 1. It's like, wow,
That's a lot.
Makes sense, though, because like at the very beginning of the game when people are at their weakest, that's probably where the highest casualty rates are going to come from.
Truth.
And then episode 3 takes place from April of 2023. So April of the next year all the way to December of that year is like, that's the amount of time that takes up. And then episode 5 starts out in March of 2024. And everything from that point on through the rest of the show continues through November of 2024 by like episode 14. That's where we're at.
Whoa, that's heavy.
But it was a little confusing just how like it jumped through time. Like we got to episode 3 and suddenly Klein was there, with his own party, and it was like, oh hey Kirito, it's long time no see, or how we jumped to episode 4 and we get that little meeting where Asuna is that's where we learn she's the co-commander of the what's it called?
Knights of the Blood Oath.
Yes, right. Knights of the Blood Oath. We get that whole bit where, what was it? She was advocating for some sort of strategy involving using like new players to go fight a monster or something. I don't know. Something that triggered some morality thing in Kirito's head, but it was never really brought up again. But I don't know. Did that bother you guys at all? Like just how it basically in the course of 4 episodes, it jumps 2 years into the future.
See, what I always think of is when they have time skips is that most of the time these are supposed to be on like TV. So you're going to be waiting like a week or even a couple days between each episode. So it's like you have to wait and then like, oh, time skip. And it's like, oh, that's because we've been waiting. So now time has passed. So I feel like if you watch it back to back to back, it can get a little confusing.
Oh, yeah.
But like when it's supposed to probably be like a week or so, it's like, oh, well, I understand.
And I could maybe understand that if that was just the structure they were going for. But then you get, like we said, everything from episode 5 to episode 14 takes place in relatively sequential order. There aren't any huge time skips. Whereas in the early episodes, we get time skips of months and months of time.
Yeah, I think it was episode 8 that said like it happened like 2 years after episode 1 or something.
So by episode 8, we're basically in November of 2024 in that case. So over the course of those 8 episodes, 2 years pass.
So I mean, like
in the real world,
the early episodes, I feel like that's just a lot of grinding, and it's like, oh, we're leveling up, we're going through dungeons. I feel like if they showed like everything that happened, it would just get really monotonous.
Yeah,
and just boring.
I would agree with that, but at the same time, like with the whole idea of if the show had gone with a more epic, adventure story sort of whole thing. I could see them doing a thing where, like, every episode, they get to a new floor of the giant Einkrad
we would need
castle.
75 episodes.
I know,
that.
And I'm not saying they would literally have to do that for every floor, but to have the introduction of a new floor, and and they get to the dungeon, and each dungeon has some twist to it, and something along those lines. I would have enjoyed that a bit more, I think, and seeing them do some clever stuff with that, and actually, developing the characters, as they go on this journey and adventure trying to beat the dungeons.
I like what they did, and I forget what episode it is, when they, is after they find Yui, and they go back to Town of Beginnings, and then remember that orange-haired guy with the weird spiky hair?
Oh, yeah.
He's like the leader of the army, and I'm like, oh, you're such a jerk.
Yeah.
You're such a tool.
Well, but of course, the guy who was a jerk in episode 2 has to be a even bigger jerk later on. Because
of course, but I kind of forgot about him until then. I was like, oh, you did something then. You're not dead.
Yeah, it's kind of nice that he does come back. Although, one thing I found One thing I found a little odd about that is they say that he, that he's the one who accidentally trapped or not accidentally, purposefully trapped the real leader inside this super high level dungeon. And the girl was saying, like, we need your help because of this bad guy's influence, nobody within the army wants to go and save him. But earlier before that, she had mentioned how he was the reason that group had gone to go fight the big blue demon guy, and that ended poorly, obviously, because they lost a bunch of their guys, and how that reflected poorly on him, and his power had been shaken within the group, and that was the whole reason he was getting desperate and did this thing to get rid of the main leader guy. So if his power base is desperate and like struggling because of his recent failures, then why would it be that hard for them to get some people within the army loyal to the other guy to go save him?
Maybe because he was like, aha, I did this, I'm powerful, I'm stronger than him, that idiot, I've tricked him, and now you listen to me, or it'll happen to you then. It's like a whole fear factor.
But I don't get the feeling that I think he was trying to keep it secret, like, he courageously died in battle,
I mean, it was a high-level dungeon, so I feel like they're going to be like, I'm not risking my life for this person.
Maybe that was
I'm really selfish. We've already found out that the army only wants money, so...
Yeah.
Attack all the children.
Which I thought was another interesting thing, this whole idea of because there are so many people that stay in the town of beginnings, because they're afraid to go outside.
Taxes.
What happens? There's a group that comes to basically just patrol that area and make it their own, and then they are able to tax the townspeople because they can't fight back because they're super low level and they depend on the army for their safety and all that. So. Although I guess not really safety, because as long as you stay within the town, monsters can't attack you. That's one of the rules of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's think. I'm trying to think. What is episode 8 about? I don't know. I suppose we don't have to go episode by episode. We can just start talking a little bit more generally about the stuff that happens from 8 to 14.
There is the marriage.
Wasn't that episode 11?
I don't. It might have been 10. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
the
it was
exact
10.
episode number.
Yeah, it was 10.
Well, we did get that whole plot point before the marriage with
that creepy guy.
Yeah, Asuna having that guy.
Oh yeah, that.
What
guy.
was his name? I have it written down.
No
here.
one cares 'cause he's dead.
Yeah.
That was his name, and he was the guy who was following Asuna around all the time.
Being a creepo.
Yeah.
And but in the beginning though, they established him to be this guy, who's just defending her because that was his orders,
Right.
But
and he thinks
staying outside of her house, if that's not a red flag,
Right.
I don't know what is.
Red flag, right.
Because
I
that
know.
wasn't like his order. His order was like to protect her. He's like, that means standing outside your house. And she's like, no, it isn't.
right.
But
Well, if he's supposed to be a bodyguard, then that's what bodyguards would do.
she's stronger than him.
That's true, But yeah, and you get the whole duel between him and Kirito, in that episode. Which, of course, Kirito wins because he's the main character and he has plot powers to give him,
Plot and a jutsu.
pretty much, to give him all the power he needs. And that was around the time when it was becoming very, very apparent to everyone watching the show that Asuna was developing feelings for Kirito.
Oh yeah.
Although I suppose where you really start to get that is you get that whole bit where Kirito takes the rare rabbit to her place and she cooks it, and that was another little MMO thing I liked, how she would just tap the meat with like a knife and it immediately chopped up into a bunch of little pieces.
Wish it worked like that in real life.
Right.
That was great.
But she even made the point how cooking was oversimplified in SAO and there wasn't really any skill to it.
So, I think that's better. Food faster, easier.
Yeah,
I like that.
I would agree with that too because I can't cook worth a damn, certainly.
I never tried it myself.
But that's the episode where Asuna, sort of gets Kirito to join her party, and that's like their first step towards their eventual marriage and all that good stuff.
Oh, the Mary.
Yeah.
Aww.
Oh, that was something I forgot to mention back. I think it was at episode 6. There was definitely a bit of foreshadowing because I think at the end of that episode, after Grimjaw's been arrested and all that, Asuna even asks him a question about marriage.
Oh yeah.
Like, would you get married to someone in game or that you
Because
didn't
it's
know
like
in
the
real
shared
life?
inventory. And
Oh, right, the whole shared inventory thing. Like, yeah,
Right.
that gets brought up in that episode, and definitely giving some pretty not so subtle foreshadowing that might
Right.
happen to them later on.
Right.
And I think Grimrock even says something to the effect of like asking Kirito about falling in love and then losing it all. He said something to that effect, like, well, just wait until you fall in love and then lose everything, see what happens to you. I thought that was going to be foreshadowing for something, which it kind of in one way, kind of in another. I suppose when he loses Asuna, in the real world and she's trapped away, he kind of he gets a little mad and stuff, but he never really
he never snaps.
yeah,
He never does a Hamlet.
if she had actually really died, then he would have snapped.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
There would have been blood.
yeah.
Part 2.
I will say one of my favorite episodes is one, I don't know, it must be 9 or 10. The episode numbers get a little vaguer as we go along, but the episode where they go and they fight the big blue demon guy on like floor 49, or no, it's not 49, it's later than that.
Is that when
think that's
Heathcliff
9.
is there, too?
No, Heathcliff's not there yet.
Oh,
hasn't
yeah,
been
he fights the
introduced.
skeleton centipede.
Yes, that's later on. That's
thing
like
was creepy.
episode 13.
Oh, that's like all my worst fears in one.
Oh, really? Like
Dead
skeletons
things,
plus
bugs, Bones.
But I love that episode just because that had to be one of the coolest fights in the show, in my opinion, because you saw everyone getting their ass kicked by this giant blue guy, and even Asuna and Kirito doing their tag team thing can't seem to stop it. And you'd gotten a reference earlier where Asuna asked him, like, why aren't you using the sword that Liz made for you, and why do you not carry a shield?
Like, no reason.
It was a little bit of foreshadowing, and
he's not even like secretive. He's like, I don't want to talk about it.
right.
Nope.
And then he even says, like, am I really gonna have to use that skill? And then he finally does it, and it is pretty darn badass, I have to say.
Kind of, sort of badass. Kind of a lot.
Yeah, like just seeing him when he's doing that, he just keeps like saying like faster. He just keeps hitting him as quickly as he can. Animation there,
Beautiful
pacing.
Yep.
I think that's what the music in this show. I forgot to mention it. It's done by a woman named Yuki Kadra. Who actually did.
I loved all of like the vocal music sound. Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah, apparently she's done a lot of soundtracks. She did like Dot Hack, Tsubasa Chronicles.
Oh, really? She was Tsubasa?
Yeah, she actually did Madoka Magica and
Really?
Fate Zero as well.
I love Madoka music so
Yeah.
That
much.
explains that.
Yeah,
So beautiful.
She's up there with like Yoko Kanno as far as like the great anime composers apparently, and
Right.
and I thought her score in this was pretty well done. There's the main theme. I think it's called Swordland. It's the one that basically plays at any super epic moment in the show, and it's got that choir, epic choir music, which
love
always
it.
makes anything seem way more cool.
I love it.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it a lot.
Like apparently the whole lyrics are like talking about food or something.
right. Yeah, well, actually, if you listen to it, I think they say it sounds like they're talking about like coffee and all this stuff. If you actually listen to it, it's like
Doesn't even matter.
once you hear somebody point it out to you once, you can like never unhear it again. That's the problem.
Why did you bring it up? It's all your fault.
Blame me.
I'm sorry.
It's all your fault.
But I did think, in that episode, Kirito had a pretty good reason for why he'd keeping that skill hidden for so long, because it's basically like he didn't want to be like the height of publicity, like
He didn't want to be a super beater.
right, didn't want everyone to be like knocking on his door asking him for training or how he got it, or people being jealous of him having this dual wielding skill. Which did it turn out in the end? He just happened to get that because he was the best player in the game.
Something had like the best reaction time or something like that. It was awarded to them. Heathcliff said something like that.
I think you're right.
So like, oh,
There was a reason he got it.
it's given to you because you have the highest reaction and sword skills. So this is for you.
Yeah.
Smiley face.
Go team.
Go team.
Fight me.
Yeah, well, we get to that here. I want to say, I think that's around episode 11-ish or so
I
where
don't even know.
he fights him. But
He's big cheater face.
I will say the episode, I think it's pretty soon after he beats the blue demon guy.
It's like the episode after that.
Yeah, actually it is. They beat the blue demon guy. He has to fight Heathcliff, and there's this whole big battle. And
then he gets attacked by what's his
right.
ugly face.
Real quick, though, I just wanted to once again point out, basically, any time that there's like a serious battle going on in the show, and they crank out the animation budget for a fight scene, like I've said before, those were always my favorite parts. And the fight against Heathcliff in particular was really good because it's like the two best players in the game. Kirito's got like the best offense, and he's got this perfect shield, so
big cheater face shield.
Well, as it turns out, I was sort of thinking at the time when it looks like Kirito's about to hit him, and then Heathcliff moves super fast and manages to beat him. I thought it was going to turn out that he was like either he was cheating or he was using some sort of super special skill. That he had.
No clip.
I was not actually thinking about the possibility of him being Kayaba
He's a
at the time.
cheater face.
Cheater face.
I like Kayaba though. I like him.
I think you.
Later on.
Yeah.
Later on you like him.
Well, you mean when he saves his butt in
Yeah,
episode 24?
it's like the end of Korra when you're just like, I never thought I would have Tarlock feels, and then you do.
I find him interesting as a villain, because he's doing this terrible thing in the first place, but he does sort of show that he loves video games. It even says there when the when the castle is crumbling, that, you know, he just made it because he had this dream as a little boy of this, you know, giant castle in the sky, and he just wanted to make that a reality, you know, and he gives Kirito he turns off his immortality and gives him the chance to beat him at level 75, you know, since he deduced his identity. Like he believes in making things fair for the player.
They would have never made it to level 100.
Right, like how Kirito deduced, like, well, it'd just be super boring to just watch people play an RPG, so you'd want to be in the thick of the action yourself, you know? Like, that's the sort of mindset that Kayaba has, which I find interesting. The problem with him is that it's never, like, they address the reason why he made Sword Art Online, you know, like I said, the whole castle thing. What's not addressed is why he did this whole death thing and caused the deaths of 4,000 people.
Because he can.
The best reason we got is like, I don't know, felt like it.
Pretty much, like, well, in the first episode, he says something about it, you know, making the game more realistic, you know, and really investing players in the game. But when we get to the end, you know, and he's been cast in a bit more of a sympathetic light, you know, he has the chance to reveal his motives. He doesn't really, and we never really get exactly why he did the whole death thing, you know, because that causes a lot of people's deaths, and that's really not cool, dude.
Not really.
You know, especially when near the end of the show, Kirito's like saying, you know, that man, Kayaba Hiko, he was a great man, you know, unlike you, when he's talking to the current villain.
There are many things I would... Many bad things I would say to that man.
But it seems like Kirito just is completely ignoring the fact that, you know, Kayaba, maybe he had this nice idea in his heart, but he still did this whole thing, and he still did kill 4,000 people. Are we just ignoring that? I don't know. That was one thing that bothered me. But then we get what's his name, Kuradiel's betrayal, and I actually was quite invested in that moment because it really is sort of a, oh heck, geez, what now sort of moment, because, you know, how are we going to get out of this? Because they're all alone in this canyon, and he's sticking the sword in him, and Kirito's about to die. Yeah, he's paralyzed.
And it's like, no matter how high level you are, you can get taken down by cheap tricks.
Right.
And it's scary.
Yeah. Well, I did think it was kind of funny how right before they leave, there is actually a little funny moment where I forget his name, the commander of Kirito.
Like, this will be a great bonding moment for you guys. And they're just like, okay, man.
Yeah, he was like super enthusiastic, and the two of them were just both like, yay.
Really unenthusiastic fist bumps.
Yeah, but then, of course, that when Kirito betrays them, then he just goes from looking relatively normal face to having this ridiculously like evil look on his face, and he reveals he's a member of that, what did you call him?
Laughing Coffin.
Yeah, the Laughing Coffin, who we had seen earlier, like they were at the duel between Kuradiel and Kirito, and you like saw one of their members. The beginning. You know, which really, I was expecting that also to be some sort of plot point that came up again, like that Kirito would have to deal with them at some point, but that never really came up other than with Kuradiel. But I felt like less to do with the organization as a whole, more just this personal revenge he wanted against them for humiliating him.
See, I feel like if there's a lesson to be learned in anime at all, it's just don't trust people with really creepy looking faces.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Because no matter who you are, if you have a creepy looking face, there's like an 80% chance you're going to be a bad guy and stab everyone in the back.
Also, wasn't it a bit strange to anybody? Like, it makes sense, you know, as for the reason why Asuna comes and saves them, you know, because she was following them on the map and saw the leader guy disappear, you know, when he died and all that. But isn't that just slightly creepy that Asuna's just like basically looking at like a Google Maps of where her boyfriend is at all times?
She's worried because she couldn't go.
Mm-hmm. I know, but still strikes me as a slightly creepy, of course, but it saves his butt in the end, so, you know, it's a good thing. But still, just a little bit odd to me. And then I did find it a little odd how, okay, so Asuna shows up and very stupidly, you know, believes Kuradiel when he's like, "Oh, forgive me, I'll be nice." You know, she puts on her guard just for a second. Of course, he's able to, you know, hit her sword out of the way, and then Kirito shows up. But what seems a little strange is that, you know, before we'd never seen anybody like, unless they were dying, like nobody ever got cut in half or anything. We saw Kirito come up and he blocks the sword with like his hand, and his whole hand pops off. But if Kirito is so strong and Kuradiel's like at a lower level than him, shouldn't have just scratched his arm just like that happens at every other time he gets hit in the show? Like he never loses an arm at any other point. He just gets the scratches all over him.
Maybe because he was already paralyzed and weakened. I don't know.
But Asuna had healed him at that point because he was like at the point of death, and then she healed him.
I don't know.
So I don't know. So
maybe because he wasn't.
Because I was sort of thinking like that. Well, because the arm came off, maybe that means is suggesting this is more permanent. You know, like that he's gonna actually have to like get some sort of replacement for his hand or do something to get it back.
But then your father.
But then in the next scene, he's just completely normal and his hand's there. So it was just for dramatic effect, I guess. It really had no purpose within the show. So, and then another thing that had no purpose within the show, Kirito comes up and like punches him. Falcon punches him in the gut, to kill Kuradiel, which is cool and all. But then as he's dying, Kuradiel feels like something about like how you're orange now or something like that.
You're a murderer, and he's like, whatever, man.
Person.
Right. And I thought that might be a plot point, like, oh, well, wouldn't they wonder why, he's a murderer now, or where Kuradiel went? Like, is that going to be a plot point?
Maybe because it was like his first offense, it was like, we'll forgive you this time. Maybe it's got to be like a recurring thing.
Well, I can't believe that, I mean, maybe the idea is they just told him, hey, this Kuradiel guy was completely insane, and everyone believed him, and it was no problem, which makes logical sense to me. But at the same time, like, the fact that there's literally no repercussions for him killing this player and being orange, at least for a short time, saying that he had mentioned it as he was dying, I thought that would be some sort of plot point, but nope, never mentioned again, completely glossed over. So we got that. And then of course, that's the scene where Asuna and Kirito finally confess their love for each other.
And kiss.
And they drop the bombshell, let's go get married. Yeah. And that's where I was just like, oh, no.
Oh, boy.
I think you all are rushing into this.
Yeah, because and it's not that I don't buy the relationship. I could certainly buy them being boyfriend and girlfriend,
Do you ship it?
Yeah.
Well, it's canonical, so yes, I'd ship it, fine. I have problems with shipping where it makes no sense. When it's within the show, okay, fine.
If it fits, it ships.
Whatever you say, Clara.
If Andrew was here, he'd back me up.
Well, Andrew's not here today, so
I'm alone.
There's no one to back you up. But I would have bought it if they were just boyfriend and girlfriend. That would have made sense to me. But the fact that they take it to marriage when in the real world they're respectively 16 and 17, not even above 18. That's like a little bit creepy and just not right in my mind. And the fact that they've known each other for a while now, but they've only been seriously like hanging out with each other for a few months. So to jump from, hey, we've been hanging out and we've never even said we're officially boyfriend and girlfriend to let's get married and go live off somewhere, in a house by ourselves, like, I don't know, just they hadn't built up enough narrative for me to believe that, to buy that.
Cabin in the woods.
That's pretty much what it was, wasn't it?
A little bit.
Log house in the woods. What did you guys think of the little bit after that where Kirito and Asuna go back to her place and she sort of misinterprets his whole idea of let's sleep in one bed
spend
tonight.
the night together, and she's like, "Oh, that only means one thing."
Yeah.
No, it means two things.
Yeah, that was
means three things.
That was it was silly.
It was silly, but it was kind of funny. I'll give him that.
Thing is, like, I don't get why she punched him. It was her misinterpretation.
Yeah, you got to feel sorry for
faults, you proud woman.
You got to feel sorry for poor Kirito in that situation. He was innocent.
He's so unfortunate. He just is so unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And now we get to the whole bit with well, I think before we get to Yui, don't we? We get the whole bit with them. No, the fishing bit is after Yui.
Yes.
Episode 13, I think.
Yeah, you're right. So then we get the whole Yui introduction, which definitely felt strange to me. As soon as she woke up and she started saying "mama" and "daddy,"
I knew that was going to be a thing.
I kind of suspected it too, and it was like, okay, so it's not bad enough that these 16 and 17-year-olds are getting married inside this video game, whatever. But the fact that now they've got this like 10-year-old kid who's calling them mom and dad, and they're just like perfectly embracing this, like, oh yes, we'll raise you. You know, you're our daughter. Let's make a healthy, happy family. It's like, no, you're not intelligent enough to even be married together. You're certainly not intelligent enough to raise a kid. Okay, let's not go there. You're 16 and 17. You're not there yet.
This is an MMO. We don't gotta explain nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Did that bother you guys? Because it really jarred for me personally.
I wanted that to happen. I did. Like, I don't know. As soon as she showed up, and I'm like, daughter. Second I saw daughter. But, I don't know. I'm just glad that they went along with it.
MMORPG anime. I'll go with it.
It was really cute. And then when she left, I was really upset. Because I'm like, no, she's gone. And now they're sad. Now they're going to have to battle again. Now they can't be a family. And meh. But Yui comes back, so it's okay. She is probably one of my favorite characters.
Oh, not one of mine, I'm afraid. But yeah, I did think it was a nice little twist where it turned out, oh hey, she's this, computer program thing, and then she summons giant flame sword to beat the Death Reaper guy.
Mm-hmm. No clue.
So all of that kind of made sense, and it made her character a little bit more interesting from going this amnesiac kid to, oh, I was trapped all alone in this world. Although, and once again, she's saying like, and I was just watching everyone suffer, but I couldn't go out to help them. I felt so sad. But then there were two people in the whole world who were having a happy time in this game, and it was you two, and I wanted to be with you guys so bad, and then so eventually I did. It just sort of happened. But what bothered me about that is we know for a fact that there are other people who have gotten married inside this game, or people who have these happy, peaceful lives in the game. There's no way Kirito and Asuna are the only ones happy in this game. So why would they say that?
They surpass everything.
I know, but why you even put that in the script? Why do it? You know it's not true, based on the world you've established.
Rewrite it, reanimate it, go.
All right, so that kind of bothered me. And then you get Yui going away. It was a little bit sad. Once again, they at least gave it a full 2 episodes to develop a little bit. Although, once again, sort of like with the mystery episode, I thought that the whole Yui plot line was going to be important. Like, they were going to go on this whole little quest and learn, like, the truth of who she was. And she was going to turn out to be someone super important to, like, the main bad guy. And there would be this whole thing going on. She's a computer program within the game and blah, 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 blah. But nope, it's all resolved in a 2-episode little mini arc. Mm-hmm. So, once again, I kept on wanting for there to be some sort of, main plot beyond just the general beat all 100 floors of the game.
She serves a huge purpose in Season 2, though.
Yep.
Well, but she doesn't even serve a huge purpose in Season 2. She's there a lot.
Yeah,
but
she does. She breaks down all the walls.
Well, yeah.
She gets him in there.
Yeah, she serves a functional purpose, but she's basically just there to move the plot along and to, help him within the game and basically be like Navi from Ocarina of Time. That's what I kept on thinking.
But she's not annoying. She's adorable.
Mm-hmm. She could be somewhat annoying, but she didn't talk all that often, so I could tolerate it.
It was cute. She tried to act human. It was adorable. It's like, don't humans yawn when they wake up? And I'm just like, oh, you're trying so hard.
Okay, that part was a little bit cute, I'll admit.
Ha.
Okay, and then from there, we get the fishing episode with the fishing guy, and that sort of felt like a little bit of filler.
He was silly.
Not so neat, necessary filler. And did anybody else catch when the fisherman guy is talking to Kirito and he makes this super ridiculous face?
Oh, yeah, that was quirky.
It was just a little strange because throughout the rest of the show, everyone's pretty normally drawn, but just for this one moment, this guy just turns around to Kirito and has this, like, his mouth is just super open, his eyes are super wide. It's like the most ridiculous face you've ever seen.
It's like he suddenly became an anime character.
Exactly. It just comes out of the blue. It was a little strange.
He's a strange little man.
But I did kind of like the whole bit where, as they were saying goodbye to him, Asuna was like going over, how she was happy that she had come into Sword Art Online, was going over basically the whole story and how she met this guy, who was relaxing by a tree one day and wanted to sit there and enjoy the beautiful weather because it was the prettiest day, in the Aincrad like weather cycle. And I actually did like that whole sort of bit, like that was the intro sort of for Asuna and Kirito as like getting into their relationship, really.
That was cute.
Yeah, I actually did kind of like that, with Kirito despite the fact that he's pretty super serious into the game too, he's able to take it easy, and he sort of shows Asuna how to do that too, which was kind of nice. And then we get into that episode, and we get the whole fight with the giant skeleton monster thing, which was once again pretty cool. That and the dragon, I think, were two of the 3D effects that were used in the show.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and they were done well. It wasn't like immediately obvious, like, oh, this is 3D. It looks way out of place. They did a good job of blending it with the 2D stuff.
It fit.
And that was another epic boss battle. That was one where it wasn't just like Kirito and Asuna. It was like this whole group of 30 people going at it.
See, what made me angry later on is that what's this, Heathcliff, which I love the name, by the way, but the whole time he was an immortal object the whole time, and he didn't try to protect anyone, and I was like, Kayaba, why? You're such a jerk. I hate you. You're the leader of this guild. Protect your people.
But I'm sure he did protect some people. Like, he would come up, and shield people, with his immortal shield thingy.
Yeah, but it was still annoying because he was like, oh, I'm kind of immortal. I could probably just take this thing down in 2 hits, but I'm not because I'm so.
Well, technically, since he's the creator of the game, he could literally unmake it with the press of a button.
I know, and it made me angry that he didn't.
Well, but that's the whole point. It was all sort of a game to him.
He's worse than a beater.
Well, yeah. He's the guy who has them trapped all there in the first place. Of course, he's kind of evil.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
But I like him.
Well, and I did quite like the twist there, although I didn't fully understand why just at that exact moment, I guess it was just that Kirito saw how everyone else was exhausted and how Heathcliff still hadn't had his health bar go below yellow. And that's when he sort of put all the dots together and sort of had this assumption that he was...
epiphany.
Yeah, that he was Kayaba, and he goes and attacks him, and does the whole immortal object thing, and that was a legitimately good twist, and I'll give them props, to that, because it makes sense, but yet I didn't see it coming.
Oh, yeah.
And how Heathcliff was saying that was the whole point. Wouldn't it make a great story, for the game, for the final boss, for, the hero, the greatest player in the game to turn out to be the final boss?
Yeah.
It sounds pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was cool, and like I said, how he was being a player in the game rather than just an omnipresent observer or something. And then we get the duel between him and Kirito, sort of the rematch, which was cool, but I was a little bit disappointed in it just because, Kirito kind of failed against him pretty spectacularly when he goes to stab his sword against the shield, and the sword that Liz had made broke. And that's when I think Heathcliff's about to attack him, and then we have Asuna, who... through the power of love, somehow overcame the paralysis.
Part
because
of the cards.
He even says, oh, well, glitches happen from time to time, whatever. It just sort of glosses over it. And it's just there for plot convenience sake, just so we can have this moment. Who cares how she got paralysis?
You remember the Saint Nick episode? I totally thought that Klein was going to be da-da-da-da. But it's never mentioned ever again. And I was so mad. I was like, no, he has to revive her. Hurry, 10 seconds is clicking. Hurry, hurry, hurry. And then it never happened. And I was like, Klein, you let me down.
Oh, yeah, that's actually... Well, but Klein was paralyzed, so we couldn't have it.
They were all moving kind of, sort of still. They can move their arms a little bit.
That's actually... That's actually a good point. I hadn't thought of that, but that is... Although... That's only a plot point if Klein still has the item, which he may have used it already with one of his fallen comrades or something.
I feel like he wouldn't have used it unless it was Kirito, because they're bros.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Super bros.
But as much as he liked Kirito, he was also in a guild, and he had his friends. I feel like if one of them had died, he would have immediately tried to save them.
But because it was never mentioned that he had used it, I was a little hopeful, eternally hopeful, even though I knew it. Yeah. Right. Sad.
And I did kind of like how after Asuna died, Kirito was just so defeated, he's just swinging his sword around, but he's not even trying at that point.
I don't even think you tried.
Nope. Although once again, just another inconsistency within the world that they'd established in Sword Art Online, because every other person who dies, when they die, their whole body and their equipment and their clothes and everything that's with them disappears when they died. But with Asuna, because of course she's the main character, her sword gets left behind, so it's convenient for Kirito to grab, and uses his other sword.
Of course, he gets knocked out of his hands, though. But
Well, no, actually, his other sword
his
gets
other
knocked
sword, that's right.
out
His
of his
other
hands.
sword.
So he uses Asuna's sword to save the day. Of course, because that's how it
course.
has to happen.
Of course.
Because logic.
Yeah, and then, of course, you get the way he defeats poor Kayaba, which I thought was a little bit BS. Because, he's got the sword stabbed into him, and you keep on thinking, like, oh, his health's almost drained. He's going to do something right. It's like, nope. And he's like, you are dead. And he starts to disappear. And then I just guess he's just like, shonen superpowers activate. I'm just going to defy the laws of this game and
The
stab you.
shonen no jutsu.
Pretty much. I mean, that's pretty much what Kaiba said later on. Like, you showed me the power of the human spirit, defying the laws of this game just through your own will. And it's
Heart of
like,
the cards.
yeah, are we really good to just use that, the heart of the cards, believe in yourself, through your own power and will, you can do it, that sort of thing? Is that the message we're going for here? I was hoping for something a little less cheesy from the show, but
A little bit.
Nope.
that's not what I got. But
Awesome.
so yeah, Kaiba dies, and I did quite like the whole scene where he and Asuna are standing on the clouds. It's almost like they're in heaven and they're watching everything disintegrate. Kaiba comes up there and talks to them for a bit and tells them that everyone's going to be safe. But at the time, though, you're not really absolutely certain whether Kirito and Asuna are going to wake up like everyone else or if they're going to actually be dead, because technically they died in the game.
Technically.
But I guess Kaiba's just sort of like, well, technically you died, but you died in order to beat the game, so you get a pass. Don't worry about it.
I like you guys.
And
You kids are cute.
I actually really found the ending of episode 14 to be quite powerful, where he wakes up and he's got the super long hair and his bones are like, his flesh is like tied to his skin or his flesh is tied to his bones, just because he's been
Malnourished.
right. He's been stuck to this hospital bed for 2 years, but even though he's that way, as soon as he wakes up, he's just keeps saying Asuna's name and holds on to his little IV stand and goes down the hallway.
Making my way down.
You get that, and then you get that long shot during the credits where it's just him walking down the hallway towards the light.
I skipped the credits.
And
Yeah, the show should have just ended there.
yeah, I honestly thought like
no,
they could have
she
ended
had to
it.
wake up.
They could have ended it there, and it would have probably been okay. Honestly, that's probably a little bit of a better ending than the ending they ended up with in the second half.
I like the second one because they get to punch a creepo in the face.
So, I don't know. What are your guys' overall thoughts on the first half of the show? I definitely feel like the first half is the stronger half of the show, because really everything that was established in the first half is what carries the second half of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But even the first half of the show had its problems, as I addressed.
Intriguing, but fascinatingly oddball.
What do you mean by oddball?
Well, it's just that, like the whole emotional core of the show kind of like goes like up and down, up and down. It's like the whole thing doesn't really like have a consistency of sort. I mean, yeah, pretty much like compared to the second half, the first half is really, really emotional. And in fact, if you think about it, if you kind of like talk to people who like really, really like this show, it's always the first half they talk about, rarely the second half. It's always like the emotional core and all the feels from the first half that they all love. But if you talk about the second half, they're like, not as good as the first half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think, Clara?
I like the first half because they had to establish a lot, and in the second half it was like, oh, you're here for like 3 days. All right, you're now a master at this game. You can fly. Congrats. But like the first game, like you actually had to try really, really, really hard to get strong, and you couldn't die. Dying was like bad thing. But like even though dying wasn't a harshest penalty you could possibly have in the second game, there was a penalty, and it was mentioned, like he's like, oh, a game that you can't die is too easy, but then he realizes, no, it's still a really difficult game, and I was being an arrogant little butt face. So it kind of like all worked out, but it wasn't as like, I was pumped that Yui came back. First of all, I was super pumped about that, and how he like had all of his stats. I'm like, oh good, he doesn't have to start from square one. But at the same time, it was kind of cheap.
Yeah.
And I was like, you jerk.
Well, he even says there, like, I'm not just a beater now. I'm just a plain
cheater.
flat out cheater.
Yeah, he accepts it, but he doesn't like turn himself in. I wouldn't either, but
Well, of course not when he's
I'm a terrible person.
when he's got to save Asuna.
Right. Yeah. But then I knew it was going to be his sister. I knew it was going to be it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, to be fair,
Everything
like
about their relationship's uncomfortable.
that did I actually didn't see the whole Leafa being the sister thing coming. I guess I probably should have, but that was legitimately surprising. But yeah, from there it's just like, oh god, is this where we're going with this plot point? Really?
Broken heart times 2.
Yeah, no.
Oh, it was like the war. Oh, she must have felt horrible.
Because how they introduced them in the very first episode of season 2, 15. They have their little kendo fight, which was kind of cool. And we had gotten in the past about how Kirito was saying, how he felt bad, because she did the kendo class like in his place, and he always felt guilty about that, So they had this past relationship with his, with the sister, who is actually a cousin, as it turns out,
So it's fine,
right? And the fact that he even says at one point, that when he came out of the game, one of his personal goals was like to be a better person to her, because he had sort of shunned her before, and so I find all that okay from Kirito's angle, but then is it Sugu?
Yeah,
I think that's her
Sugu.
name. Yeah, really.
Slightly
I realize you're
uncomfortable.
not brothers and sisters, but you're still cousins, so you're still biologically
So knock
related.
it off.
Knock it off. I don't want incest in my anime, please and thank you.
Nope.
She tries
Not
real hard
cool.
though.
She does.
But it's like, okay, she's like, all right, I realize I can't really like my brother because he's with Asuna. I kind of now have feelings for this online character named Kirito. Oh, it turns out to also be my brother.
Right, which...
Gosh darn. Oh.
How stupid is she exactly? Because you look at obviously he's named Kirito in game, not his real name, but still, he looks almost exactly like his real world self, and he sounds exactly like his real world self. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that he's the real guy from real life. What is his
I feel
real
like
life
if
name?
she saw him when he was
Kazuto.
in Sao, like because he had like the black cloak and the black spiky hair, I feel like if she had seen him then and knew, I don't think she ever like knew his character name.
Oh, no.
That's like the
Nope.
thing, so that's why she wasn't like put off instantly.
Right.
If his name was Kazuto, it would be like instant rag flag. Like, are you my brother?
I know, but he still, even then, he still looks just like he does, or not just like, but very similar to how he looks in real life.
Right, but I mean,
Just with pointy hair and the elf ears.
but even Sugu, she doesn't look anything like her character.
Well, right, but
And there's so many players just around the world playing, so it's not like every person you see, it's like, oh, it's someone I obviously don't know. So
Yeah.
I understand how she can get confused, but I mean, if she's
yeah.
there is a lot of similarities between those.
I suppose
Oh.
in this one, all the characters don't have to look like their real world selves, unlike SAO, so it does make some sense. And I did quite like the whole plot point that they established early on with Asuna still being in this coma, with the nerve gear on her head.
Yeah.
And we get the establishment of
She's gonna get married when she's in a coma, but it's creepy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would flick him in the nose if I saw him in real life. Oh my gosh.
Whoa. You're going pretty far there.
I am going pretty far. I
Really,
mean,
pretty far.
I shouldn't even have to waste that much energy on him. Flick him in the nose.
I don't know. I just can't believe that her dad was okay with that. Like, oh yeah, it's
sure,
cool
go
that,
ahead.
that my daughter's gonna marry this guy who's like several years older than her, and while she's in a coma.
Well,
That's cool.
We've known him forever. He's in our company. And I'm obviously always turning my head around whenever he's like molesting my daughter with his eyes. But
negotiable terms.
Yeah, and he shows the audience pretty early on. When it's just Kirito and him, and he's just like stroking her hair and like touching her
being
lips
creepy
and things.
when he like, I replicated the smell of your hair. Okay, just stop. Stop. Right? No, I'm done.
No.
I'm done with this right now.
Yeah,
This isn't happening anymore. Stop.
yeah.
You are not human.
Well, and I definitely think he falls into the line of the villain that, like he, unlike Kayaba, he had no honor. He just abused his admin powers within the game, to basically make himself invincible.
And made tentacle
But-
monsters.
But yeah, we'll get to that. Don't
man.
worry.
I don't want to talk about those.
But once we get to Once it comes down to it, though, and he's put on an even playing field with Kirito, like, it's quickly apparent that he has no real power, and he's just kind of a pathetic, character. And so he's not really that interesting of a villain. The only thing that sort of makes him interesting is just how completely insane he is.
And creepy.
And, when he gets that whole... basically rape scene with Asuna,
but not quite. Almost enough to make you feel really uncomfortable and have to take a shower.
Let's say sexual assault instead of rape.
Exactly. Yeah.
But still, you're saying that, and to be fair, that does make you hate him a lot because it's happening right in front of Kirito, and that's probably like the single worst thing that could happen to Asuna beyond her getting killed. And to see it happen right in front of him and him being powerless to do it, that creates a tough moment for your character. How he gets out of it, however, is such a big
loophole.
Yeah, Deus Ex Machina moment. I was not a fan of that one.
Me neither. I thought he was going to just overpower it like he did with Heathcliff, but he's like, nope, I'm hacking the system using Heathcliff's name.
Well, I almost prefer at least the Heathcliff thing, like, it comes out of nowhere, but at least it makes sense. If he just overcame it with his force of will again. I would have been really mad.
I would have believed it more. Like, it just seemed like he just suddenly acquired this knowledge of how to do this. Like, he did talk to Kayaba, but Kayaba was never like, oh, this is how you work this thing. He's like, no, I'm just going to say Heathcliff.
Well, I think we're supposed to assume that in that little, he was like floating in like white, and Kayaba appears above him and says like, what? So you're going to give up? This isn't what I thought from you. The man who could defy, through will alone, to defeat me. I thought you were better than this, or something to that effect.
I knew he was going to show up. It made me happy.
And I sort of got the feeling that he was, like they didn't show it on screen, to not waste time, but he probably like maybe gave him the codes and stuff there.
But like when he showed up, it was like that same moment in the end of Korra where it's like, that's not Tenzin, that's Aang, but it's like, oh, there's Kayaba, I knew you'd come back, type of thing. And I was happy to see him.
That moment would have worked for me because afterwards, Asuna leaves and he's standing there and Kayaba shows up again, and Kayaba says like, oh, did you think I'd help you for free? There's a price for what you've done. You need to do something for me. And I thought like that would be how they'd explain it, like that maybe Kirito was going to be forced to do something in exchange for what Kayaba did, and that would have made me feel that ending was a bit more justified. But as it turns out, he's basically just like, hey, take this seed thing and do whatever the heck you want with it, But, if you have any care in the world for these sort of virtual MMOs, then you'll, be nice to it. And then, of course, it turns out that it's just this great thing that basically revitalizes the whole virtual MMORPG genre, and so it's not a punishment for Kirito in any way. In fact, it's very much a good thing for the world. So it's not like Kaiba was putting any sort of burden on him. So it
he never said it was going to be a burden, but like you assume.
Yeah. I was assuming it. Like
it's like you're going to have to rule this world instead of him. I was like expecting something like that.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was expecting too. Like that he was going to basically become like the new Kayaba of a new world, be put in charge of it and like having to stay in that world like all the time and like ignore the real world. Like that would have been an actual like sacrifice.
I would have been mad if that happened though, because he just got Asuna out, so now he can't leave, and it's like no.
See, but I feel like that might have worked better from a story perspective. To make that ending with Kaiba helping him feel more real. Instead, it's just it happens, and here's this cool little. Whoopsies. Cool little seed program thing. Go have fun with it. Don't get punished, or you don't have to pay anything for me just completely saving you from utter defeat. Don't worry about it. We're good buds, right? Even though you killed me. That's still cool.
It's all right, man.
But, just with the second arc in general, like, I thought it was interesting what you were saying about how Kirito really wasn't like the focus of the second half of the show. How it was more focused on Sugu. Could you go into that a little bit, defending that belief?
I wouldn't necessarily like defend of it, but the thing with when we get to the second arc is that once we go there, things are like the story's a lot more consistent. Like throughout episode 15 through I would say like 24, it's really more into like the relationship of the brother and sister, and how like once they don't know that like, they're both brother and sister, and how like they're in this video game world, it turns out that they actually get along pretty well together. They go get the objective, they work together, and it eventually goes to the point where they start to form a relationship inside the game. And once the real world comes in and it comes into the virtual game world, then things get a little more complicated. Then things get sorted out, and then boom, they somehow win the game. So, again, much more consistent than like the first half, but it comes at a point where it doesn't become engaging as the first half.
I feel like if they would have like constantly mentioned like we only have a week, guys, but it was like I'm marrying her in 1 week, and then it's like, all right, cool, I guess we can walk.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, you have a week.
I think that is probably the single biggest problem with the second half. Whereas the first half, say what you will with it, but throughout it, it had this whole thread of if you die in the game, you die in real life thing.
Oh yeah.
Whereas when the second half now, they've got this sort of timetable to go get Asuna, and maybe that would have worked had it actually been more prevalent. But as it was, like you said, I think within like 3 or 4 days is all that the second half takes place over. Whereas if they had been getting to the climax like right about when they're about to get Asuna, if it's like mere hours before they're supposed to get married, that would have made that a little bit more dramatic.
Right.
And with the whole fact that in the what's it called, Elfheim Online, you die and you get some sort of death penalty within the game, but then you just come back.
We never find out what exactly it is. We assume it's like you go back to square one, you like lose things, or you have like a rogue status, but we never actually find out.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking you lose some items, you lose some XP, but once again, it just makes it feel more like an actual game rather than this life or death struggle like Sword Art Online was. So it just took a lot of the tension out of the show, unfortunately. And
I did like the Kate sits. I was happy that I was very happy that they were cats. I thought it was adorable.
I thought that was interesting just because has anyone else here played Final Fantasy VII? Because one of the main characters in that is called Kate Sith.
Are you guys going to hate me that I said I haven't?
No, I haven't either.
I haven't
that's good.
I haven't actually played it. But I know all of the characters. I know the story and everything.
Yeah, and the whole story thing that happens later on.
Exactly.
But
what else was I going to say about it? And then, just the lack of any sort of driving plot point in the second half. And the fact that the whole thing is built off of the relationships established between Kirito and Asuna in the first half, which works to a certain extent, because, like I said, even though I don't think it went all the way to marriage, that marriage was too far, I did like the relationship between Asuna and Kirito. But the fact that basically Asuna is confined to the role of the damsel in distress character.
Yeah, she had like none of the strength she had from the previous game, which I was mad at.
Nope.
Well, so you weren't mad, like, because I pointed out that she had been losing some of that strength even later on in
it's because
Sword Art
like
Online.
In Sword Art she had the strength, but she just didn't use it.
Right.
In this she was nothing. She couldn't fight back. I mean, if this was Sword Art Online, those tentacle monster guys would be dead in 3 seconds. If not that.
Although that brings up a good point. If Kirito, was able to come from Sword Art Online and he was able to keep all of his Sword Art Online stats and things.
But Creepo Man took her out of there and probably made her that way.
I guess that would explain
why would you give the person you're trying to confine all of her power?
I suppose that's true. I mean, but he even said though at one point that he could have, like messed with her mind and just sort of forced her to like him, but he preferred like sort of the chase, and like just sort of I'm going to wait until you
but he also knows
he's
not strong, so
right.
He wouldn't put himself in danger.
I suppose that's true.
It was actually like pretty diabolical what he was doing. It's like, I'm not going to change your mind, but I'm going to make you completely defenseless, so eventually you'll crack yourself.
Right.
And then I'll be there to pick everything up.
I did find it a little strange how because I like the idea that he's trapped these 300 players, like somehow when they were supposed to be logging out of Sword Art Online, they got captured and brought over to this place, and he's just doing these experiments on their minds to try to like basically achieve complete control over their minds like in the real world, and like basically how I read it was mind control or being able to control the human soul. Like that was his whole scheme.
And I love how the U.S. was like, oh yeah, we'll pay money for that.
Yep.
Like, oh yeah, we'll pay money so that you can let this virus loose in this giant internet that everything's connected to.
Yeah,
Summer Wars.
Yeah, once again, the U.S. being portrayed as particularly stupid within an anime.
We're not that bad.
But and I like the whole idea, he's got these 300 people, he's like torturing them and doing these experiments on them and whatever. The problem being, we never really see any of that. The closest we get is seeing all those brain images, scattered out in that room Asuna goes to, and we see the weird purpley monsters checking on him. But like, had we like maybe gone into one of those characters' minds, and seen what was being done to them, or having that pay off in some way, like having it happen to Kirito or to Asuna or whatever, that would have made the villain more interesting. But the fact that we never see it, and that at the end of the day, all of the people managed to come out of it with no psychological trauma or any sort of physical problems at all. So it's basically like nothing bad happened to him. So it makes the villain just seem all that much more pointless and kind of pathetic.
And also, it cuts him down. Like he's just a failure altogether. Nothing he does is going to amount to anything Kayaba could ever do.
Pretty much.
Because Kayaba's the man.
He's kind of disappointing as a villain.
He's disgusting.
Speaking of the tentacle guys in the brain room,
we're not going to talk about this.
Yeah, for me, like, because obviously I'd had problems with the whole harem thing going on. Where Kirito just every girl Kirito met, fell for him. Even in the second half, we get Lifa who falls for him, and then you've got the two leaders of the Kate Sith, and then the leader of the other elf race, who both immediately attach themselves to Kirito.
Well, he's also very strong and just helped them out, so they're like, "Oh, hey, you want to join us?"
Yeah, I suppose that was more political.
Using our feminine wiles.
That was more political than love, really. But
right.
Once again, just every girl falls for this guy. And I had problems with that.
He's so dense.
And the second half of the show definitely had more fan service than the first half did, especially with Lifa/Sugu, which
all the boobs.
Was
episode 18
added to the creepiness factor with that whole relationship, and we won't go there. But by far the worst bit is where we get this whole bit where apparently the tentacle guys were scientists under Sugu's like command in real life.
Sure, they were.
Well, that's sort of what I was led to believe anyway.
Yeah, they're like, we need to call the boss man.
Exactly. But why the heck are they these weird tentacle monsters where literally everyone else in the world are the fairies? Why are they these random things?
I don't know. Because maybe they wanted to be.
I don't know. They just look, it's just so it just feels out of place in that world, Just
to add to the creepy factor.
Yeah. And then we get something that borders on tentacle rape, and we go into a whole territory that we do not want.
We're not going to talk about.
We do not want to touch. Just to say that it should not have been there and did not belong in this show, and
serve not.
Serve no real purpose other than to creep out Asuna and to give the fanboys something to appreciate those who like that sort of thing.
I guess
they can leave.
Yeah, we don't want to associate with them.
Nope.
And
there are things that shouldn't go there, and that's one of them.
Yeah. And so, I've sort of said my business with the second half. It's similar to the first half in that, a lot of the plot things it tries to do, they aren't the most interesting. I did kind of like how Kirito showed a little bit more brains when he showed up at the meeting and told the leader of the fire guys that, he was part of this Spriggan and Yulian alliance or whatever. He just basically made that up on the spot, in order to convince him to leave. Like that showed a more tactical, tricky side of Kirito rather than just the shouting, screaming, fighting.
Yeah, I feel like because Lifa told him, he's like, "Oh, you guys are pretty much like con men." He's like, "Oh, now I must be sneaky. I must think of sneaky things to do."
Right.
Sneaky.
Yeah. And so I did like that, and the fight between him and like the general of the fire guys was another one of the coolest fights. Yeah, the salamanders, that's what they were called.
I love how it's like, oh, Spriggan, Kate Sith, salamander.
Right.
What? That's kind of boring.
Although it was slightly confusing to me how he, the Blaze General guy has this cool ability where his sword phases through an object and then re-solidifies, to hit Kirito.
It's so cheap.
Well, yeah, it is cheap. But then once he gets two swords, it seems like then he's able to just kick the guy's ass. But couldn't the Blaze General just do the same trick, except, it's just once he gets to the second sword, that's when he materializes it. But instead it was like he completely failed once there were two swords in the game. It's like, whoa, this changes things up, dude.
Everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
You're really going to reference that again?
I am going to reference that because it happened.
All right.
Yep.
But, so that's an awesome fight. It was kind of cool having the whole flying thing, adding dimensions to the fights. What did you guys think of the whole bit where Kirito and Leafa are fighting those...
Guardian things?
Guardians?
Well, I was going to get to that. There's the bit in the episode previous where they're fighting the group of salamanders who's like launching magic at him.
Oh, on the bridge?
And then...
Yeah. And when
he randomly turns into a monster.
It looked like it was something from Sal.
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah, well, it looked like the blue demon guy, except black and purple, basically.
Didn't they ever mention that later on in the show? Because it seems like it happened in like one episode and then it never brought up again.
Yep, much like other things in that show.
Man, that was awesome. I'm never doing that again.
Well, no, he didn't say he'd never do it again.
Well, no, but I'm like,
thought
that's
it was
what
cool.
happened.
Well, right.
It's like, once is fine.
I didn't quite get it, though, because she had said beforehand, Leafa had said that Spriggans could create illusions. So I thought, he was going to make this illusion of a monster, but he somehow transformed himself into it and went around and just killed all those people and massacred them in kind of a horrible
he's
fashion.
just a loophole.
I guess.
He is the glitch.
I know. The only thing I could think of is that, maybe it was like a more advanced level of Spriggan magic where instead of it just being illusion, it actually made you into that thing for a short period of time. And he was able to have it because he has such high level, even though he never used magic before, which is kind of wonky plot-wise. But
bogus.
Whatever. It was a cool fight. I'll let it slide. And then, the whole fight with the Guardians, like the first time he goes at it, and you really get that sort of helplessness as he just can't beat like these thousands and thousands of them.
I raised my eyeballs when they made it. End of Evangelion reference with the whole like hand thing like coming up.
I saw somebody making a note of that, and I didn't know it because I haven't seen all of the End of Evangelion film. But
yeah, let's save that for another day.
Yeah, man, if we ever did that on the podcast,
dear.
it would be interesting.
Yeah. I'm up for it. By the way, I've seen like all Evangelion related things, so I'm open to that if you're ever interested in that.
I see. I've thought about doing some of the rebuild films because I actually quite like Eva 2.0, but I really don't care for the rest of the Eva franchise.
Funny thing about the second movie, I've heard some people say it's like watching a Michael Bay film.
Really?
Yeah, not all of them, but it's like mainstream Hollywood-esque filmmaking or something like you'll probably see on a Michael Bay.
I don't know. It's pretty close to being like the rest of the show, except they add in one new character, really, and then they change the ending and make Shinji not such a whiny little hateable character.
Princess.
They actually make him somewhat relatable, which is why I like it.
Have you seen anything about the third movie yet?
I just know it has Ava's in space and is kind of weird.
I've like peeked through like the third movie, and if you have any questions about that, I'll be willing to talk about that. But we better get back to the show.
Yeah.
I like the ending after they get out of ALF or whatever it is, but
I think it's ALO.
something like that.
Alfheim Online or whatever.
I
it's called.
don't even care. But like he's running there, and I'm like, awesome, he's gonna get there. Oh wait, why is there blood? And then he's like, I'm crazy, and I'm gonna kill you now. And I was like, that's illegal.
Yeah.
That's even more illegal than what you're doing. Stab.
Right.
But then I was like, no, Kirito, don't kill him. You'll sink to his level. And then he doesn't. I was like, I'm proud of you.
Right.
I'm proud of you, son.
One thing that had confused me a little bit, because when Kirito lowered the pain tolerance levels all the way down to 0, in the game,
I thought he was going to die.
Just as a side note, why the hell would they include that in an MMO? Basically allowing players to physically get hurt through the in game. Why would they even include that as an option? Don't know.
Because reasons, I don't know.
But I thought the implication was that basically when it goes down to 0, you die, whatever happens to you in the game happens to you in real life. So if you die in the game, you die in real life.
Oh, that would suck. He's he got his arm cut off, he got split in half, he got split in half again.
Yeah, he really got
again.
Yeah, so but then that didn't end up happening. He's still alive.
Unfortunately,
he just has this weird glitch in his right eye.
Yeah.
And,
it's I missed.
But it was a well done writing moment, I thought, though, because it makes sense that he would be there to try to kill Kirito.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it coming.
I didn't either. Not at all.
And and then I was sort of like you. I didn't. You didn't want to see Kirito kill him.
But you did, but you didn't. And, you're seeing all the horrible things he did to her.
It's sort of it's sort of that different thing where killing someone in cold blood in real life versus doing it in the game. Like, he would have done it in the game without hesitation, but in real life, he hesitates, of course.
I think it's like, this isn't a game anymore. It's like his step into the real world.
Right. But I agree with you. Like, for all the problems I had with it, the episode 25 does conclude things quite nicely, with them going to that high school for all the former SAO people.
I'm proud of this. I'm proud of this country for doing that for them. I feel like it's really nice. I was happy with that.
And how you mentioned the like Liz and the other girls, who liked Kirito in the game, how they had like their month ceasefire, before they would start going after him. Like, I thought that was kind of cute. Even though was it Liz who was like staring at them like angrily?
I thought it was cute.
But
Agreed.
I mean, it's nice that they have that sentiment and all, but they've got to know that there's no way Kirito's going to abandon Asuna after everything he's done.
What I was confused at is that in the game, Liz had pink hair, and I thought, it's supposed to be what you look like in real life. But in real life, she had like a light brown hair, and I was like, that's not pink.
Yeah, that was a little confusing to me.
And then the other girl had like blue hair or something, and like, your hair's not blue. What? It's different. Stop. Stop.
But yeah, that was a little confusing.
Minor details.
And then, and I thought it was quite nice where we had that little reunion at Eagle's bar. That was like the first time we'd seen Klein in real life, and a bunch of people in real life.
I love him. He makes me happy.
Yeah. I kind of liked how Kirito went up there and ordered a bunch of alcohol and then started drinking. It was like iced tea.
It's like, hey, this is tea.
And then
he's like, I know.
And then Klein shows up and orders the real thing, and it's just, I hadn't really thought about it, even though it was kind of obvious, but it's like, oh yeah, Klein's probably like over 21, whereas Kirito's really young, actually, in comparison to all of the rest of his friends, basically.
Bros for life.
Yeah. But I thought that was all cool. And then you got poor Sugu, sitting there in the corner like, oh, well, I don't know any of these people.
She could have talked to them and made friends, but no, she was a whiny little princess.
Yeah. And I did feel sort of bad for... Oh, I forget his name.
Raycon.
Yeah, Raycon,
he was so cute.
He was whiny and sort of annoying.
But then he totally rocked.
Yeah, but the fact that he was, he did care for her, and she never, it was an unrequited love sort of thing, you did sort of feel bad
cool,
for
whatevs,
him.
Man.
And that she needed to get over Kirito and just go, get a relationship with the boy that really likes her, in the real world.
Will treat her like amazing.
Exactly. A little bit obsessed with her, actually.
A little bit.
And even he got to have a little cool moment in that fight with the Guardians where he blew himself up and destroyed a whole bunch of them. That was kind of cool.
But it didn't matter anyways. And I was like, oh. You tried.
Yeah.
Here's a star.
Yeah, and so I like that. I like how the World Seed, turned out to be this whole thing that revitalized the online MMOs.
Made it not be a completely evil thing.
Nope. Exactly. And then we get the little bit where, poor Sugu is in the in Elfheim Online, and it looks like now they've changed it so you can fly indefinitely, but there still is a barrier on how high you can go, which I thought was kind of nice because it's before the barrier was you couldn't get beyond the world tree, and now that you can get beyond the world tree, now it's now let's go for the moon.
And that can't.
There's always going to be a barrier, no matter how far you let it go.
I liked how they brought the castle back in because now they can't die for Sirius.
Yeah.
So it's nicer.
I thought that was kind of cool, and you got the little scene with them dancing on the wind, sort of thing.
I feel like he needs to stop leading her on a lot.
But I felt like that though. That was. At that point, they had gone over the whole relationship thing, and I felt like it was more of a brother-sister thing, how you dance with your brother at at a wedding or something like that.
Right, but I mean, even when Asuna shows up, she's like, and I'm like, knock it off.
Well, that's Sugu more than Kirito, I think.
Right,
Sugu's
but she's still not over it, that's the thing, and he's all like, hey, let's be really close, and she's like, I like you a lot, and I can't stop doing that, and I'm sad, and I'm like, Stop.
But, and then we get, we got the whole bit where the whole reason, I guess, that she was so sad, at the party and there in the game was that, she felt like she couldn't keep up with Kirito anymore, he was so beyond her.
And he's like, no, I'm at level 1.
Right.
Let's go fight this tower.
Which I fully understand. So it was the idea that just after, he beat Elfheim he didn't really beat Elfheim Online, but after he saved Asuna, and they went to a different developer and everything.
Everything got reset.
They reset everyone's SAO, stats back to 0. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, which I think makes more sense, and then I did think it was cool how the Einkrad castle, showed up again, and it was like, this time I'm going to beat all 100 floors.
Yeah, I feel like it's like almost not fair because it's like they know what's going to happen now and they can't die. But at the same time, it's like, even though you can't die, it still puts you back at square one. So there's still repercussions, but it's not as...
And we don't even know. It may not be the exact same SAO as it was before.
Probably not, but because it was like the castle itself, it's like, it's probably the same thing.
So,
It would take so much time to just recode all of that, though.
Yeah.
So much work.
Yeah. And so it is a nice ending, with like the whole group of them, all of their friends and everything just flying off towards, the castle to like start their work on getting through all 100 floors of that, Although I think it does show some of the weaknesses of the second half of the arc when they have to rely on, remember this cool thing from the first half? We're bringing that back for the ending. Because we all know you like this better than the fairy stuff anyways.
Yeah.
Like, when I watched the opening, because I had read the 300 whatever comic, and it didn't mention any of that, I'm like, why do they have pointy ears, and why are they flying? It didn't make any sense to me, and so when I actually got there, I was like, oh, it makes sense.
Yeah, it sort of bothered me at first with the whole pointy ears thing. Like, when I first saw the second opening, I was like, oh, God, I'm going to hate this, aren't I? But I actually got used to it rather quickly, and it didn't bother me too much.
Didn't bother me.
But like
it did or didn't?
Didn't.
Okay. Good.
But it's like they included it in the first opening of the season also. Like, they included like a little bit of the ending. It was like, oh, we're flying around now. And I'm like, who's this? Who is this green-haired or blonde-haired chick? Who is that?
Who is that?
Is that really in the first?
I don't know. Don't quote me on it. But I remember being confused about why it was there so early.
I see. I think you're wrong about that, but I'll have to double check. Although I will say the first opening does spoil basically the fact that Asuna and Kirito are going to basically go get married. Like they make that pretty obvious.
She's still in her helmet.
Pretty much.
Although I will say that the I do quite like that first opening. Not so much the animation there is nice, but I really do prefer the song is what really works for it. It's a good song.
Agreed. It's on iTunes for like 99 cents or something.
Nice. So yeah, I guess we can get to overall thoughts about the show now. Personally, for me, sort of as I've said, it was sort of a show where I was going in like hoping it would actually have like this cool story or be this cool epic action adventure thing, and then instead it sort of fumbles its way around and deviates on these other plot points and never quite gets to that adventure story that I really wanted it to be. But for what it is, it still had some moments where I was like really invested in the show, like and with the characters, or it had cool plot points. And then, like I said, whenever it got to a big fight scene, the fights were always beautifully animated. Honestly, some of probably the coolest fight scenes I've ever seen in anime. So I think I could definitely praise it for that. The animation was nice, the music was nice. The relationship between Kirito and Asuna, although taken to a few levels too far, in my opinion. I still did care about the relationship. And I felt sad.
Too spontaneous.
Right. I felt sad when they died. They did give it some time to develop, even though it isn't the most unique relationship in the world. It's sort of something you've seen done in other anime before. But so overall, I'd say this is a good show. A good show that had the potential to be great, that had this awesome premise, but just fumbles too many steps along the way to really be great. So I'd recommend this show if you're looking for a show that's got some great action in it and you're willing to sort of turn your brain off to some of its story problems, because there are quite a number of them. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Chase?
Yeah, to me, I pretty much got what I expected. I pretty much went into this thing going, okay, this is the Japanese take on the MMORPG game thing. So I'm going to go into this thinking like, again, it's a Japanese version of that sort of thing. And I pretty much got what I expected. A lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, and kind of expanding upon a 25 episode arc, which is basically involves like this loner basically developing relationships as he goes through this virtual realm and discovers that basically that the relationships that you formed in a virtual reality are pretty much similar, but not totally like the same in a virtual world than in the real world. And then it develops into the point where essentially any of his friends can basically interact in the real world through the virtual world. And again, the show just kind of develops it from there. And for what it was in that perspective, I think it did it relatively well. I mean, again, if you go into it expecting like big epic fights and a whole lot of like fights where you fight big dragons and big monsters and stuff, you're going to be disappointed because that only happens like, 4 to 5 times throughout the show. So if you go into the show like that, you're probably going to be mostly disappointed. But if you go into it like as an anime with MMORPG elements, you'll be surprised at times.
Yeah, I would clarify my bit with just a quick note. Like, if you're a gamer or an MMO player, you'll be more inclined to like this show just because it has those elements in it.
Right.
And I would say even like when I was saying action adventure show, I'm not even meaning like that they have to fight, a boss like in every episode, or they have to have a big fight in every episode.
Right.
Or not even to that effect. Like, I'm not saying that they needed more fights, although I think it would have been cool if they had more fights. But I just wanted the adventure aspect. Like I wanted them really traveling and like conquering new areas and stuff. Whereas it was usually just them going to areas that they'd already beaten and being able to go wherever they want, just teleporting places. Or it was them in a dungeon fighting, but then just none of that adventure travel aspect like you get in shows like Full Alchemist or One Piece or things like that. That's what I really would have liked to see in it. Anyways, Clara.
I thoroughly enjoyed this anime. I thought it was a really awesome concept. I liked the whole permanency of actually dying in the game. It gave it like a really strong just sense of wanting to beat the game, and like this wasn't something that you could just brush off. It just got a whole level of intensity to it. But like when it kind of went into the little fairy mode and how when you die you really didn't die, it was like toned down a little bit. But then it worked because it, like I said, it like fed his arrogance, and then he realizes, oh, I'm not completely immortal. So it was a nice little character thing for him, Kirito. But like I feel like if the series decided to like do this whole Gears of War thing where they had books that pretty much talked about everything that didn't happen in the games, or like did like a little mini series based off of that where they showed them progressing, I feel like that would actually be pretty popular, just to show the travels and show the skill gaining. And I don't know, I think that would be a really cute idea. But I really liked it. Despite what everyone else thinks, I enjoyed a lot of the female characters because I love the female characters. I think they're cute.
Understandable.
And I liked Kirito as a character. At points, he became almost like untouchable and a little bit unrelatable, but at the same time, he was also this really big slacker who was like, oh yes, I'm powerful, but I'm hiding that being a total bum. And I was like, all right, that's kind of cute. There wasn't really a character who I really disliked, just besides the creepo face, for like being a character. Like the bad guys were supposed to hate, but there really wasn't a character who I was thoroughly annoyed with. Like most animes, I'm like, I can't stand this one person. But I don't know, there really wasn't a character like that. It was a little relieving because then every time they come on screen, I wasn't like, ugh.
Right.
It was more like, oh boy, new characters. Mm-hmm. Yay, Klein.
Yep.
Yay, you're such a thug.
Cool. All right, we've got about a minute left here before logic fails on us. So real quick, what do you guys want to do for next time? I was sort of thinking of doing the show Psycho-Pass. Matt talked about it a little bit last week. It's a show by Gen Urobuchi. It's a new show. It's actually not completely done yet. Of 22 episodes that are going to be coming out, only 16 are out right now on Hulu.
Oh, man.
So I was thinking it might be kind of cool to do that for 2 weeks from now, and then maybe if we enjoy it, we could even do like episodes as they come out, sort of like we've done with Core in the past, because I enjoy doing that. Okay, and then so we'll do that 2 weeks from now, and then next week to fill in that week space, I was thinking we'd do a top 10 movies podcast, very similar to the one we did for the top 10 TV shows.
So just like top 10 anime movies we've seen.
Pretty much.
Does that include like anime movies or just like Miyazaki movies? Like,
anime movies.
So like if I was like, oh, I like this movie of Naruto, I could say that.
Yes, you could.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. All right. So long, everybody.
Okay, bye.
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 This product is copyright AVW Productions 2012.